Charles Manson, a name that's still today associated with evil. But what drove Charles Manson to being one of the most notorious figures of the 20th century? Well, if you're watching this video, you should already know a little bit about Charles Manson as well as the Manson family. The Manson family was the cult of hippies that he was controlling and that they were out doing their bidding. But the Manson family committed a series of brutal murders in 1969. Manson himself never actually killed anyone, although there were attempts. But later on, he was arrested for orchestrating the murders. To better understand Manson, we're going to use psychology. We're going to unpack his mind and dive into his psyche. So let's start with his childhood. Was not great. He had issues with his mother. His dad wasn't around. He was in and out of juvenile detention camps, or juvenile detention. He went to boy camps. Yeah, not great. He experienced a lot of abuse during that time period as well. His mother actually traded him for a beer once in a diner. Later on, his uncle had to come and grab him. So yeah, not a great upbringing. Not an excuse to have people killed because of your philosophy or your beliefs, but still not great. Next is that Manson had an issue with his self-image, which could also explain his later behavior. He didn't know who he was. He had a Napoleon complex almost, but yeah, self-image was definitely a big part of it. Eventually, Manson was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which is a mental illness that causes delusions and disordered thinking. Manson truly believed that he was getting messages from the Beatles, from their Helter Skelter song, from the White Album, which he would constantly preach that the Beatles were sending secret messages, that the song Helter Skelter is what he called the future race wars. That one day African Americans would essentially kill white people. And that's what he was telling his followers, that they needed to get ready for this apocalypse that's about to happen. Charles Manson was a racist, definitely. Later on, his parole officer did believe that his racism was probably taught within the jails, within his time in jail, from juvie to a grown-up, being in jail consistently. In jail, typically people stay to their own race and join gangs in that fashion. So we've already covered a little bit about Manson. Bad upbringing, paranoid schizophrenic, that believed the race war was on the way. I'm sure the LSD and the other hallucinogenics and the drugs and alcohol and everything else didn't help anything. He was a racist, obviously. But let's look a little bit deeper into his psyche. So besides, we've already covered that he was a master of manipulation. He had great charisma. But Manson was a textbook narcissist. He craved attention, recognition, and power, using his charisma to manipulate and control others. His self-importance came above everyone else's. He was the smartest, most talented person in the room. He was a musician, which he actually partied and lived with the drummer from the Beach Boys, which was an entire thing. His music's kind of weird, but I wouldn't listen to it myself. But it's Charles Manson, he's a killer, so I had to look into it. Besides his manipulation and charisma, he did display traits of antisocial personality disorder. Let's see. Manson displayed traits consistent with antisocial personality disorder, characterized by a lack of empathy, disregard for societal norms, and didn't care that he manipulated and lied to people. He showed no remorse for any of his actions, from stealing, from killing. He didn't care. He would even have the Manson family do night crawlers, I think is what he called it, where he would just have them break into someone's house when they were either home or not, and just psych out tactics, move around their furniture, just to make them feel like violated. And we already covered that he had delusions, and paranoia, and a bad childhood. So that's Charles Manson. This is his background. This helps us understand his mind a little bit better. No one will know as much as Charles Manson, but I think this was a pretty good dive into it. Thank y'all for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.